Order 66 was Palpatine's endgame to defeat the Jedi, and relied upon executing it at the perfect moment. But what if Order 66 was accidentally activated during the Clone War? Let's start this story in the final year of the Clone War, at the Battle of Ringo Vinda, right after Ahsoka left the Jedi Order. In the midst of battle, 501st Clone Trooper member Tup's inhibitor chip fails, as he points his blaster towards Jedi Master Tiplar and shoots her down. But in this story, at this very moment, every clone trooper that existed would have their inhibitor chip malfunction at the exact same time. Something went wrong. The Kaminoans had incorrectly manufactured the inhibitor chips and accidentally included a software virus that caused the chips to malfunction and activate Order 66 that was ingrained into them. Anakin, Tiplar, and Tip Lee were fighting against Admiral Trench and his forces, as they all feel it through the Force. Tup executed Jedi Master Tiplar, and the rest of the clones in the 501st stop attacking the droids and turn their blasters towards Tip Lee, who's overcome with grief, staring at her fallen sister. They shoot her down, as Anakin can't believe what he's witnessed, his men killing the two Jedi Masters. But he can feel something is wrong through the Force. The light side is dying, he can feel it, and the clones must be attacking the Jedi everywhere. He looks towards Rex standing next to him, his hands shaking as he's fighting back the command. In his free hand, he points to his head, attempting to tell Anakin that something is wrong inside, alluding to the inhibitor chips. But the command ingrained into the captain takes over, as he raises his blasters towards Anakin and begins firing. Anakin had to move fast, as the entirety of his forces began firing towards him. He blocks the fire eloquently, and uses his acrobatics to get out of the line of fire. He knows he can't defeat them all, and needs to escape quickly. He heads towards the entrance, and pulls crates towards him with the Force to block it off, and Force pushes the clones coming to his side backwards. This created the time he needed, and he begins running towards the hangar bay. He engages clones on his way there, but doesn't kill any. These are his men, who have fought beside him for years, and they don't deserve to die. As he's making his way towards his ship, his thoughts are clouded with his friends, Ahsoka and Obi-Wan, and is praying they make it through this. He needs to get back to his wife, to make sure she's okay and not caught up in any of this. He tries to not let these thoughts consume him, as he makes his way towards his ship, and successfully disembarked from the main cruiser and escaped. Meanwhile, Order 66 had been executed around the entire galaxy, and the clones are successfully cutting down the Jedi all over. Meanwhile on Coruscant, the Council gathered in session, as they all felt it through the Force. Masters on Coruscant included Ki-Adi-Mundi, Obi-Wan, Mace Windu, and Saesee Tiin, with the rest off-world. The only Masters that joined the meeting on hologram were Yoda and Plo Koon. The rest, their whereabouts unknown and presumed dead. They discussed the death of the light side of the Force around the galaxy, and Plo Koon and Yoda detailed that their clone troopers turned on them, but they successfully escaped. Windu covers his mouth in shock, as he proclaims this must be happening around the entire galaxy. Yoda tells the council members on Coruscant to prepare for a siege, as it's likely the clones could raid the temple. Meanwhile, Palpatine sits in his office, as Order 66's execution is reported to him. In Revenge of the Sith, Palpatine perfectly engineered the execution of Order 66 so that its success was guaranteed. But that was not the case in this timeline. He planned to execute the Order in roughly 8 months' time, for a few reasons. Firstly, so that the galaxy was at a point where it would be open to the formation of a new galactic empire and the purge of the Jedi, but it wasn't there yet. He needed more chaos to brew from the Clone War and more public discontent for the Jedi. Secondly, he needed to manipulate his prized possession, Anakin Skywalker, so that he would join him by his side in the purge of the Jedi. But now, he doesn't even know whether he survived. He sits there, fists shaking in anger, as sparks of lightning begin to emit from his fingers. He almost cannot contain his rage, but he calms his emotions, as he knows now isn't the time to lose his cool. Palpatine has a big decision to make. Does he carry out his grand plan now, or wait? If he ends the purge straight away, too many Jedi are already dead, and there will no doubt be an investigation into the inhibitor chips, and they will for sure be discovered. But if there's one thing Palpatine is good at, it's adapting. He has his emergency powers in place as Chancellor, and if he needs to, he can blame Order 66 on the Kaminoans and proclaim they were working with the Separatists. But he needs to have Order 66 activated for as long as possible, so that as many Jedi as possible are wiped out. A few may survive, but he'll have his empire completed by then, and afterwards, he can turn Anakin to his side to destroy the remainder of them. He contacts Dooku immediately, and tells him the plan has changed. He orders him to bring his largest fleet to Coruscant, and begin attacking the planet. But he and Grievous must come to the Jedi Temple directly, to assist him in the purge. Dooku complies, and the plan is set in motion. The Separatist forces come out of space, and immediately engage the Republic forces. Meanwhile, Dooku and Grievous break off in a small fighter, and land outside the temple. Dooku can't believe what he's seeing. Thousands of clones rushing into the Jedi Temple, as the sound of blaster fire echoes throughout the halls. Dooku, Grievous, and Palpatine, assisted by the 212th and 187th Clone Legion, raid the Jedi Temple and completely sack it, killing every Jedi inside, leaving no survivors. The three Sith together attack the Council members Windu, Obi-Wan, Ki-Adi-Mundi, and Saesee-Tiin head on, and their battle was legendary, and the display of Force techniques and lightsaber styles was beautiful. But the Sith had the edge, assisted by the clones, as they cut down every master in their way, and eliminated the Jedi inside the temple. Meanwhile, Anakin meets up with Yoda and Plo Koon, who fill Anakin in on the situation. They go back to Coruscant immediately, hoping to assist the Jedi inside the temple. But as they land outside, they sense they might be too late. The dark side surrounds the temple, and the light side signal has been almost completely wiped out. They enter to see Dooku and Grievous, who look back at the three Jedi with fear on their faces. Dooku realizes they've been set up. Palpatine left them 30 minutes before, and ordered them to stay to defeat any Jedi that return. But in this moment, Dooku realizes that Palpatine has left them to be lambs for slaughter, as he knew Yoda and other council members would return. Nevertheless, they engage the three Jedi in battle, but the two fatigued Sith, who've used up most of their energy, didn't stand a chance against the fresh Anakin, Plo, and Yoda, and were swiftly defeated. The Jedi rush to the communication center of the temple to check for security footage of what's happened, but find it all to be wiped out, something Palpatine had done to hide his identity. Yoda sends a message to surviving Jedi that they've secured the temple, and all survivors are to return. Whilst this was happening, Palpatine sent out a command to all clones in secret to stop Order 66 and conclude the hunt of the Jedi. The clones snapped out of it, all briskly unaware of what they had done and why they'd done it. Palpatine stopped Order 66 so that he could manipulate the Jedi and Senate into believing that he had discovered its cause and stopped it himself. This would improve his image in the Senate, but also stop the Jedi from investigating it so deeply if he provided a sufficient explanation. The battle above Coruscant concludes, as the Republic forces defending the planet defeat the onslaught of the Separatists. Palpatine addresses the Senate in an emergency meeting. He proclaims what's happened, that the Separatists and Count Dooku have attacked the Republic at its core and led a campaign on purging the Jedi Order. He continues by saying that they used their own army, the clones, against them, as they were the ones who hunted down the Jedi. Shock and gasps encompass the Senate, as none of them can believe it, but Palpatine tells them to not fear, that his scientists have analyzed a few clones and concluded that the Separatists used a synthetic bioweapon which seeped into the blood-brain barrier and deep into the frontal cortex of every clone, which allowed the Separatists to take control of the clones and use them to carry out their bidding. The gas which releases this bioweapon is tasteless, colorless, and odorless, and therefore undetectable. The Separatists have been planning this for months and must have been secretly releasing this toxin through all Clone War battles around the galaxy, slowly gaining control of the clone army. Obviously the Separatists haven't been doing this, but Palpatine successfully fools the Senate with his story. Yoda, Anakin, and Plo enter the chamber as Palpatine talks. Palpatine tells the Senate not to worry, that he's just got reports of Dooku and Grievous being defeated by the Jedi, as well as the Separatist forces outside of the planet also destroyed, and thus the backbone of the Separatists are no more. Their plan failed. Furthermore, his scientists have experimented on an antitoxin that will be mass produced and administered to each clone trooper immediately to ensure they are no longer compromised by the Separatist bioweapon. He states that this is not what they hoped for in the war, that the Jedi Order has taken a significant hit in this attack, but they will turn it to their advantage. As with the death of Dooku and Grievous, they can take the advantage in the war. But there is too much instability regarding the clones and the state of the galaxy. But to ensure that the Republic is to survive, the galaxy will be transformed into the First Galactic Empire to ensure a safe and secure transition. This achieves applause throughout, as Palpatine had successfully manipulated the Senate, filling them with fear regarding the Separatists almost taking over the clone army, but swiftly provided them with a solution and the security of victory with his new empire. However, Yoda watched in shock as he couldn't believe what he was hearing. For almost 1,000 years, he had defended democracy, and now he was watching it be undone with his own eyes. In the following days, the Jedi that survived the Purge returned to Coruscant, but the number of Jedi that returned was far less than what Yoda expected. Around 80 Jedi returned, and the Jedi were a shadow of their former self. Yoda helped to facilitate the repairs on the Jedi Temple, whilst he met with Palpatine, imploring him to return the galaxy back to democracy. But Palpatine remained firm, and states that his empire will remain. That is what the Republic needs in this post-war society. Yoda knows there's no getting through to him now, but he'll remain persistent. Anakin also visits Palpatine, who tells Anakin he's sorry about the death of his master Obi-Wan. Anakin hasn't really had the time to process Kenobi's death, since so much has happened over the past couple of days. But inside, Palpatine smirks, as he knows he's the one who killed him. Anakin questions him on the necessity of his empire, asking if it really is the only way. But Palpatine tells him his empire will be for the good of the galaxy. He'll initiate economic stability, reducing inequality between the rich and poor, social justice by reducing the scrutiny that non-humanoid species receive. He'll promote infrastructure development, improving the quality of life for billions of inhabitants, as well as humanitarian aid, which is most important in the post-war galaxy, and knows the people of the Republic need this now. He tells Anakin that he knows the Senate is inefficient, and if it was in its previous democratic state, nothing would get done for the people of the Republic. But now with himself in full control, he can initiate these policies to rebuild the galaxy. Anakin is fairly convinced by this. He knows the Senate is slow and corrupt, and Palpatine's plan seems good and genuine. But Palpatine explains that he has a secret task for Anakin, that his spies have located the remainder Separatist leaders fleeing to Mustafar, and Palpatine wants Anakin to take the 501st to capture them. Anakin does just this, and the campaign is successful. They are captured and brought back to Coruscant, and with this, the Clone War is officially over. Palpatine begins to initiate surrender treaties with the Separatist Senate and meets with Anakin, congratulating him for completing his task. He tells Anakin he'll need his help in restoring peace to the galaxy, and Anakin has seen how the establishment of the Empire has swiftly defeated the Separatists and begun surrender treaties, far quicker than the Republic could have. Palpatine's mindset is that he still needs Anakin, as he doesn't believe he could defeat Yoda and Plo Koon without him, and thinks he'll need the Chosen One's help. But he also wants the satisfaction of corrupting the Jedi's prized possession to his side. Palpatine meets with Anakin often, as the Emperor continues to explain his plans for the galaxy, and shows Anakin closely how they've already been implemented, with food and cargo ships being distributed all around the galaxy to places in need, as well as clone troopers sent to act as the police in the more corrupt places. Anakin thinks his plans are good, that they really work, and knows his friend only wants the best for the galaxy. However, this begins to form a slight rift between Padme and Anakin, as they have opposite opinions. Anakin believing in Palpatine, but Padme wanting the galaxy to return to democracy. But Padme hugs Anakin, and wishes she could forget all of it, and is just glad her husband survived the Purge. After weeks of this cycle, Palpatine decides it's time to implement his final end game. His original plans were thwarted by the preemptive activation of Order 66, but now he's adapted and will finish the job. During this time, Yoda had formed a temporary Jedi Council consisting of 6 members: Yoda, Plo Koon, Anakin, Depa Billaba, Caloran Bek, and Luminara Unduli. Yoda begins to discuss that he thought Palpatine would have restored democracy back to the galaxy by now, that his empire would be temporary to restore peace and order, but the empire's power is growing and doesn't seem likely it will disband, that Palpatine will not give up his power. He pauses, puts his hand on his chin, and follows by saying that the Jedi will potentially have to take over the Empire and restore the galaxy back to a democracy by force, that they cannot allow a dictatorship rule which goes directly against the Jedi's principles. Anakin speaks up, asking if the Empire is so bad, that Palpatine is doing good for the galaxy more than the Republic Senate could have. But Yoda explains the problem to Anakin, that all empires start out good, but eventually the leader becomes power hungry and abuses his power, that too much power for one individual always leads to disaster. Anakin quietens, but doesn't believe his friend Palpatine could be corrupted by this power. During the purge on the temple, Palpatine bugged the Jedi Council chambers and could hear everything they were discussing in their meetings. He was happy that Anakin had faith in him and knew it was only a matter of time before Yoda discussed the potential to take over the Senate, and now he'll use this against him. That night, Palpatine planted dreams in Anakin's mind whilst he was sleeping. Dreams of the remaining Jedi attacking and taking over the Senate, as well as Padme's body lying on the ground with a lightsaber wound through her body. Anakin wakes up in a panic, but looks to his left and sees Padme is just sleeping. The initial panic subsides, but he knows this was a Force dream, and that the Force was attempting to show him the future, a future he could not let happen. Anakin met with Palpatine later that day, who can tell he's distressed, and of course he knows why, but he decides to double down, further showing Anakin that he's a good person, giving him updates on his restoration campaign, as well as new plans he and his team came up with, and how the Jedi will be pivotal in restoring peace to the galaxy. This goes on for a couple of weeks, Anakin's dreams slowly driving him mad. He feels conflicted inside. He truly believes Palpatine's empire is best for the galaxy, but at the same time, he's a member of the Jedi Order, and Yoda continues to suggest that the Jedi might have to take over, which he knows will involve killing Palpatine. Yet in his dreams, the Jedi take over the Senate, but also kill Padme in the process. He doesn't know who to trust, and begins to believe Yoda and the rest of the council are keeping things from him, that they actually want to take over to gain power for themselves, and will attack the senators in doing so. That night, before they go to bed, Anakin begs Padme for them to leave everything behind and travel off Coruscant to Naboo, that they've done everything they can for the galaxy, that it's time they live for themselves. Padme seriously considers this, as it sounds good in her mind, but says that she can't, that this is a pivotal moment in the power structure of the galaxy, and she must be there to influence it. Anakin meets with Palpatine after the Emperor brings up his fears of the Jedi overthrowing the Senate, after his secret informants mention this to him. He states that this is disappointing, that he truly believed the Jedi would help him and that they were pivotal in restoring galactic peace. Anakin tells him he's right, that Yoda has discussed this at the council meetings, but that he's also seen it firsthand. Palpatine questions this, and Anakin tells him about his Force dreams of the future, and he's seen it at night, the Jedi using Force to take over the Senate. He doesn't mention Padme, because he believes Palpatine doesn't know about her. Palpatine manipulates Anakin, telling him that he is indeed the chosen one of the strongest Jedi ever, that his dream must be a warning of the Jedi's takeover. Palpatine slumps into his chair and looks off in the distance, telling Anakin that he doesn't believe he can defend against the Jedi if they decide to take over, and all the good he's attempted to do for the galaxy will be undone. Anakin's ignorance gets the better of him, as he promises Palpatine that he will help him. He'll become his inside man in the Jedi Council, and protect him from their tyranny when the time comes. Palpatine thanks Anakin, tells him he's always thought of him as his son, and thanks him for his continued support in his efforts to help the galaxy. The following day, in the Jedi Council's meeting, Yoda declares that in 3 days' time, they'll attempt their takeover of the Senate from Emperor Palpatine and restore the galaxy back to its former democratic state. Yoda sends the plan to the Council, who disseminate it to the rest of the Jedi in the Order. All of the remaining Jedi will be involved. Anakin goes to Palpatine straight away, who thanks Anakin for telling him, and says he'll begin putting measures in place. Anakin asks Palpatine if he can station a squadron of clones with Padme to protect her from the Jedi. Of course, Palpatine obliges, but he has other plans for Miss Amidala. 3 days go by, and the time is upon us. Yoda and the rest of the council advance towards Palpatine, sitting in his chair, as Yoda proclaims the Emperor is under arrest for breaking Republic law, and the Jedi will be temporarily seizing power from him. Palpatine goes to stand, but before he does this, he presses a button on his desk that sends out a recording of him executing Order 66 to every clone commander around the galaxy, and the treacherous order has once again been activated. Palpatine fights back, saying the Republic is weak, that the Empire can do so much more. But Yoda disregards what he says and continues to advance forward. But before he can take his final step, Anakin walks over to Palpatine's side and declares he will not facilitate the Jedi's takeover and will defend Chancellor Palpatine with his life. He uses the Force to steal one of Caloran Beck's lightsabers and ignites them both, standing there ready. The Jedi ignite theirs in response, Yoda begging Anakin to rethink, but he ignores the Grand Master and leaves Yoda no choice. The Coruscant Guard rush in, on either side, and hold their blasters up towards the Jedi. This isn't going to be as easy as Yoda envisioned. Palpatine turns to Anakin and asks him for a lightsaber. Anakin was confused, but sensed the determination and did so. Palpatine orders the clones to attack, whilst he and Anakin advance towards the Jedi. Luminara Unduli and Caloran Beck are forced to engage the clones behind, whilst Yoda, Plo Koon, and Depa Billaba face Anakin and Palpatine. Anakin was surprised that Palpatine knew how to wield a blade, and felt the Force inside of him, but he has faith in his friend, that he must have hid his powers for good reason. But Anakin was blinded by his friendship with Palpatine, and his desire to save Padme from his nightmares. Whereas Yoda knew exactly what had happened. Palpatine was indeed the Sith Lord Darth Sidious. Dooku was right with what he told Kenobi all those years ago, and the clones turning on the Jedi was no separatist plot. This was the moment Palpatine was waiting for, to be able to defeat Yoda, the symbol of the light side of the Force in combat. Together, Anakin and Palpatine, two of the strongest Force users in the galaxy, overpower the Jedi. Anakin began by cutting down Billaba, followed by Palpatine defeating Plo Koon. The clones had shot down Luminara Unduli, and Caloran Beck shortly followed, not able to solely block the onslaught. Yoda stood there, in the middle of the battlefield, with enemies all around him. He called on the depths of the Force, but it would not be enough. He was caught by 2 blaster bullets on his back, slowing his movement, and Palpatine capitalized, delivering the decisive blow and defeating the Jedi Master. Palpatine orders the remainder of the clones to go to the Senate, that the rest of the Jedi will be there. Palpatine turns to Anakin before he can speak, telling the boy he's sorry for keeping his powers in the Force hidden, that it was the only way to trick the Jedi into attacking recklessly, and that after they ensure the Senate is safe and his empire is able to remain and help the galaxy, and that Padme is safe, he can answer any questions he has. Anakin nods, and they rush towards the Senate immediately. All that's on Anakin's mind is Padme, and whether she's safe. They arrive at the Senate to find the clones have successfully defeated the Jedi, as their bodies lie scattered everywhere. They rush towards Padme's office, as nervousness begins to take over Anakin. Will his dreams come true? Is what's going through his mind. He bursts open the door to find Padme lying there, exactly like he saw in his dreams, with a lightsaber wound through her body. Anakin kneels by her side and shakes her, begging her to wake up, but Padme was gone. Palpatine smirked. Anakin wasn't his only inside man inside the Jedi Order. A temple guard, who in the original timeline became the Grand Inquisitor, was in cahoots with Palpatine. Palpatine promised this temple guard everything, including a position by his side as his apprentice, and next in the line for the mantle of Dark Lord of the Sith, if he did one task, kill Padme Amidala. He promised the temple guard that the clones would not attack him, but he was deceived. After he cut down Padme Amidala, he thought he was victorious, that he would finally have everything he ever desired, but he was mistaken, and the clones shot him down like the rest. Palpatine kneels by Anakin's side, who's in tears, and promises him that he will help him get revenge against the Jedi for this action, that they will pay for killing Padme. Anger begins to take over Anakin. Everything he lives for is now dead, and only one thing consumes his mind: revenge. Palpatine can sense the darkness taking over, his plan successful. Palpatine states that his empire is protected, and offers Anakin to join him by his side, his most loyal friend, but states that it's likely there will be Jedi survivors around the galaxy, and together they can hunt them down to extinction and create a galaxy filled with peace and prosperity, exactly how Padme Amidala envisioned. Anakin nods, filled with pain, as he walks out with Palpatine, having begun his journey down the dark path, and very soon there will be no turning back. If you enjoyed this video, you have to watch What If Order 66 Failed, and What If the Jedi Council Prepared for Order 66. This story really highlights how adaptive Palpatine really was, and he had a plan for everything. It shows how key Obi-Wan was in stopping Anakin becoming Vader, as he's the only one who could take advantage of Anakin's ego in battle. Please let me know what you thought in the comments below, and I'll see you all next time.